So, welcome to the eighth Ideas UK Knowledge Nugget of 2023. And we're delighted that actually, through the Innovation Network, who'll be speaking at our conference too, to welcome Clyde to present to us today. Before I do hand over, I just wanted to remind everyone that the Ideas UK conference is taking place just in 2 months' time now, on the 8th and 9th of November. We're at the Tewkesbury Park Hotel and have a great programme for you, from Rolls-Royce through to Rico talking and everything in between. And as I say, the guys from the Innovation Network who co-host these knowledge nuggets with us will also be again teaching us and guiding us through a sprint around sustainability. So we do hope you can join us at the conference. However, today is all about the 3 Ps, the foundation for a successful organisation. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Clyde to introduce himself. So Clyde, over to you, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you, Zina. Thank you for the invite to participate today. When Connor asked if I'd like to present today, I snapped at the opportunity because I just love what the innovation space is doing, and it gives me a great privilege to be part of something like this today. So jumping straight in, my name is Clyde Langley. I'm a business coach or business and professional coach. I'm currently living in Jakarta, Indonesia, and I hail from South Africa. We've been living in Jakarta for just under 3 months now, so lots of adjustments and getting used to. Just want to share quickly a personal purpose of mine. My personal purpose is to positively impact business owners and leaders globally. It's to inspire them to run meaningful businesses that ultimately gives them back time, money, and freedom. And in doing so, provide a memorable and abundant life for myself and my family, all while we're leaving a caring and nurturing impact on the world around us, on the planet. So I've had the privilege of working with many businesses over the last 8 years, businesses of all shapes and sizes, little mom and pop stores, right up through to multi-billion-dollar organizations. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today is the one thing, or the 3 things, that I've identified that they all have in common. So I just as a precursor have coached non-profit organizations. I've coached widget businesses. I've coached service businesses. I've coached difficult businesses. I've coached easy businesses. And what's really sprung to life for me is there has been identified a few areas where success is derived from, and that's what I'm sharing today. Before I get into the meat of it, I just want to take everybody on a brief but very relevant journey. So this will give some context to the presentation I'm going to share with you. So if you drive 200 kilometers up the east coast of the South Africa's east coast, if you leave from Durban, it's about 200 kilometers up the coast. You can end up at a very small little town called Matuba. Now, Matuba is a mixed-use town, agriculture, there's some manufacturing, and there's some tourism. So if you are looking for a holiday destination, you will find some of the most incredible game parks and game reserves in that area. It is beautiful. So the problem with Matuba at the moment is it's plagued with high unemployment, and it's mostly because of a broken municipality. Now, if you drive through the town and you cross over the main bridge and you drive until you can't drive anymore, just sort of very unannounced on the left-hand side, flanking the Great Umfolozi River, is sitting on the banks of the river sits a 100-year-old giant. Now, this giant is a sugar mill, to be exact. Now, why it's a giant is because at present it supports 60 commercial cane farmers. It supports 1,500 small-scale farmers, and it employs 300 permanent members. It was built in the 1920s. So over the last 100 years, this mill has innovated and innovated to the point where it currently produces 135 tons of of crushed cane in a season. Now, that's quite remarkable for a 100-year-old mill to continuously do this. So the reality with the Umfolozi sugar mill, which is called, is that it now remains as the heartbeat of this town, and that's the reality. Is that now it serves to support a number of families and people in the area. So early in February 2009, sweltering heat and humidity, 40-degree temperature, probably 68-degree humidity. There was a request that came through to my inbox, and it was basically priority, the two little red exclamation marks, that I was asked to attend what they called a BUT session, which is business understanding training session. So I jumped at the opportunity to head up the North Coast, and I understood from the communications I had with a number of the team who I was coaching at the time that this was a pretty important meeting to attend. So I arrived on the Monday, spent the day coaching I think there was about 8 senior members of the team I was working with at that time, and I spent the night. And then on the Tuesday morning, headed off to the main lobby for this BUT meeting. Heading into the boardroom, dated probably early 1970s decor, still the same chairs, still the old same curtains hanging up and blinds that were there from the I would imagine they looked like they'd been there from the early 70s. And I moved myself to the front of the boardroom and sat down after a morning of coaching a bit. And the aircon was an incredible reprieve. It was so hot. I remember the heat was unbearable that day. So as the meeting went on, about 30 or so engineers and senior managers walked into the boardroom, exchanging their pleasantries, finding their seats, sitting down, mumbling and chatting amongst themselves. And I remember clearly. So you can just imagine these big doors closing behind everybody, and in walked AD Wynn. AD Wynn was the CEO of the Umfolozi Sugar Mill. Tiny, short man, short in size, but an absolute giant of a character. This man, if anybody has spent any time exploring DISC and DISC behavioral assessments, AD was a high dominant individual. He was the leader of this team. AD was the kind of guy who got stuff done. So without any hellos, without any so much as a greeting, he kind of stood up in the front of the boardroom and said to everyone in the loudest voice he could, "Team, we've got a problem. We've got a jolly problem." He used to use the word jolly a lot. "We've got a jolly problem here." He says this mill is under siege. And of course, at this stage, it was quite a moment to sit back and realize why this meeting had a high priority to it, and not knowing what the meeting was about, we got kind of thrust into the middle of this with the story. So as it turned out, the sugar industry in South Africa was under a massive threat. There were cheap imports being dumped at the harbors for 2,000 Rand less a ton than what they were able to produce it for at the mills. So what happened was it led to a number of the small mills closing, and they were just closing one after another like dominoes. So the pretense of the meeting was a fascinating one, because it speaks directly to what we've been talking about today. And the objective of that meeting was to deliver a new purpose to USM, because not on AD's watch, on anybody's watch that was in the senior management, was this mill going to close, this 120-year-old mill. So the very first thing that what needed to be identified was a new purpose. So at this stage, as you can imagine, 30 engineers, they hated meetings at the best of times. And it was very difficult to get everybody assembled at the same time. But as AD was explaining what was going on, you could literally hear a pin dropping. So the first thing they needed to identify was that they needed a new purpose. They couldn't carry on with what their previous vision was. They needed to move towards something new and something fast that would enroll and inspire the team very quickly around the direction they needed to head to. So the purpose, the mission changed to and this gave me, and still gives me goosebumps to this day. AD said, our new mission is to be the last mill crushing. And we all sort of sat back and went, I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks because it was such an impactful 3 words. To be the last mill crushing meant that whatever happened, they were going to dig deep, expose their teeth, fight for all they could to make sure that they were going to indeed be the last mill crushing. The reason being is that one of their points of culture was community and service. So it was super important for them that they were able to create an organization that would be able to sustain the lives of the people that were in that town. Because USM was the heartbeat of this town. So last mill crushing was it. And ever since then, it's been an inspiration for everybody that works in that organization. The business has been a masterpiece and has been masterful at innovation since the early 20s, whether it be machinery, lately automation, and production. Innovation has been something which has been systemic in the way they do things. The culture of this company is around innovation, and they've worked incredibly hard to get the results they have as the mill that they are. So they have a highly skilled workforce, and they only employ the finest talent. They have systems and processes for everything to ensure that everything is in place, that they get the highest cane quality when they do crushing. So it led me to understand what was critical in business, and thinking and reflecting on what the USM was about, and how every single business I've ever coached has had the same 3 things in common. So these 3 things stand out as being purpose, people, and process, and how critically important all those 3 things are in creating an organizational objective. Now, it doesn't matter what organization you've got or are part of or involved in, you have to have a guiding light. You have to have a beacon of hope which gives inspiration and enrolls your team and your audience to what is it you're trying to achieve. So my short definition is a purpose is the underlying reason or driving force that gives meaning direction to one's actions, decisions, and behaviors. It is so critical to understand that the purpose is the identity iceberg of any organization, and all we get to see above the waterline is the organization's actions, behaviors, and decisions. So when the purpose of the business changes to the last mill crushing, it becomes a turning point. It becomes a watershed moment in this organization's history, and in redefining what the future of this organization will be about. Now, how do we enroll and inspire 300 staff members around a new vision and a new purpose? Well, fortunately for this organization, it was do or die. And fortunately for this organization, the buy-in didn't take much. So we looked at the people, and the people of this particular organization, the team members, and again, a short description here is the team members who contribute their skills, knowledge, and efforts to achieve the organization's goals and fulfill its mission. There is no mission on this planet that can be fulfilled without a full onboarding of your team and the people around you that get 100% buy-in on that. I was coaching a client yesterday, and she said, I battle with my sales team. I cannot get them to produce the KPIs. I cannot get them to submit the information that they need that I need from them, and it's driving me mad. I know what I want for this organization. I just cannot get my team to do what they need to do. And my off the back of creating this presentation was, maybe they don't understand where it is that you're going. So again, how important the purpose is to be recalibrated is super important, that your team have the opportunity to completely be enrolled and inspired around that purpose. And then lastly is the process. And my short description of process is structured, coordinated, and repeatable activities to achieve objectives, enhance efficiencies, and ensure quality outcomes. There's a wonderful saying that says systemize the routine and humanize the exception. So it doesn't matter what organization you're part of. If you do not have specific processes in place, your organization will not have any momentum. It will not gather any gains because there is nothing to work off from. You can have the best people in the world, but if there's no process for those people to follow, your organization is doomed. So my short description, organizational objectives are the clear and measurable goals or targets that the organization sets to guide its actions, decisions making, and overall strategic direction. These objectives are typically aligned with the company's mission and vision and serve as a roadmap for achieving outcomes. So if we look at purpose, long description, is underlying mission or reason for an organization's existence, to be the last mill crushing. that goes beyond profit and serves as a driving force, guiding its actions, decisions, and behaviors towards a broader and meaningful goal. We will not lose any employees. We will rather sacrifice what we have. We will sacrifice profit over people. So what I've compiled is a set of 4 questions, and these are critical thinking questions. And for those of you who are watching this and are part of this call, the idea here is to score yourself out of 10 with regards to how you see your organization scoring against some of these elements. Now, there's many more questions, and for the purpose of this presentation, I had to keep them short. But if we look at some of the critical thinking questions around process, do we all know what the purpose of our organization is? And are we able to define our mission clearly? Do we all know what our purpose is? Do we all know what the purpose of organization is? There isn't one person on that factory floor, in that mill, that doesn't understand that they need to be the last mill crushing. There isn't one worker who isn't familiar with what that purpose of the organization is. So when there's a breakdown, which there are many of, as you can imagine with a 120-year-old organization, when you get called in at midnight on Saturday evening, this is one of the reasons why the staff don't have any problem objecting to going into the mill to do what needs to be done. When I coach some of the managers I have a call early in the morning on a Wednesday with some of the team, and you can see some of them have burnt the candle both ends. There's been many breakdowns. Not one of them has ever complained about it because they understand the purpose. Are we aligned with the organization's purpose? Now, the alignment is very important because it filters back to people. Without being aligned with your purpose, it means you're an immediate incorrect fit for the organization. And it's about making sure that the organization is doing all it can to align its people with its purpose. So when we align with we are the last mill crushing, then there's a reason why we're aligning around that. Do we understand what it takes to achieve or be congruent with our purpose? This is the next thing. Now, purpose in some instances, or mission in a business, often sits as a plaque in the director's top drawer of his desk. And sometimes he brushes it out when he gets inspired to feel all flowery and fluffy about his organization. But the purpose, if it is kept as a living, breathing part of the organization's progress, then it's about making sure that we are all as congruent as we possibly can about what the purpose is of our organization. Do we have sufficient training, innovation, and regular calibration of our purpose? So in this instance, what I do with a lot of my clients is we often institute a 90-day reassessment of where we are. We look at the business, we look back into the review mirror of the business, and we see where we come from and where we're going, reevaluating things like the purpose of the business. Has it changed? Does it need to change? So give yourself a score out of 10 and be honest about the experience, because it's from here where your organization can grow. The people in an organization are its employees, and they're contributing their skills and efforts to achieve its objectives. The importance lies in the role of human capital, essential for innovation, productivity, and overall success. Without people in your organization, you have no organization. So some questions to think through. Do we have an enrolling and inspiring culture in our organization our people are proud of? Now, firstly, for many, do we just have a culture in our organization? Do we understand what that even is? So when we have a culture in our organization that we're proud of, it's the same as how we would have a culture in our family or in our away from work environment. What is the culture of our family? What is the culture of our organization? What are the points of culture that we may have? Does our team understand what our points of culture are around team and innovation and production and productivity and the way we see our clients? Now, the very first thing to understand as the leader of an organization and where innovation comes into it is how do we create a culture? How do we inspire our staff to be congruent with the culture of what is it we're about? And as a leader of an organization, your number one primary objective is to hold the culture of your company. Do we have a recruitment process which ensures we scout, employ, and retain top talent? Now, far too often, we're very good at throwing people at problems. We don't do the hire, slow, fire, fast approach, where we take time to find people that we need and that we look for that have the high skills. So, for example, a company like USM in Matuba, which is 200 kilometers away from any main town, retaining talent is a very difficult thing to do. Scouting for talent is a very difficult thing to do. So this becomes a systemic process in the business of recruitment and HR, where their whole HR department is geared around recruiting incredibly well, and they pay top dollar to make sure that they're retaining staff. Which also dovetails back into culture, because high talent thrive around being in a culture. They thrive around being part of an organization where they're proud of to be part of it. Are our people regularly trained, coached, and mentored to perform at their very best? Now, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that the coaching journey at the USM was one of the paramount pivotal turning points around the mill continue to work at the level which it did, even through the trials and tribulations that they went through, having just come out of massive droughts as well, and then to be hit with these unbelievable tariffs, which caused huge problems with the price of sugar in South Africa. Coaching helps create a sounding board. Coaching helps create an opportunity to look into blind spots. We coached a lot around transactional analysis, understanding how we communicate in the organization. It was absolutely critical that the team all were coached. There was many of the organization members were coached as possible. And are our people sufficiently challenged and equally rewarded? This is super important. It's super important to understand how our team are positioned and what they're doing. Far too often, the organization is overstaffed, and we have situations where team are not sufficiently challenged. And unfortunately, that creates drops of poison in a glass of water, the proverbial glass of water organization. And then equally rewarded. My opinion on this is that we want to be rewarding not requirements. Whatever meets requirements, you don't want to be rewarding that. We want to be rewarding what meets requirements plus. So again, give a brief score of what you would deem the people component of your organization to be out of 10. And the honesty here is where improvement comes from. So lastly is process. Process is a structured series of documented activities designed to achieve specific objectives efficiently and consistently, ensuring quality outcomes. Now, the word here really that stands out is consistency. The word consistently means doing the same thing over and over again. It's about doing the things that need to be done in an organization, whether members of the team want to do it or not. And it's in that consistency that breeds a good quality in your processing. So some of the critical thinking questions here. Are our processes well documented, well known, and easily available for our people to be trained, retrained, and cross-skilled with? So that's a super, super important part of the process, is how many of your team members are not sure about what actually needs to be done, what is required of them. So the first thing is around documenting your processes. Standard operating procedures can go a long way. Doesn't matter what size your organization is. When you're documenting your processes, you're ultimately making yourself redundant in the business. You're able to now have somebody come in and follow a set of documented work steps that enable efficiencies. Do we make use of current scorecarding or KPIs and other accountability processes in our organization? And two, depending on the size of your organization, understanding what the scorecarding and KPIs will give you an understanding of what your business is capable of. It gives you a line which you can work from. So we understand if our performance is below the line or if it's above the line. We need to understand what those are. Again, far too many organizations don't have any metrics available to measure the performance of what's happening in the business. And are our managers and leaders adequately trained, coached, and mentored to provide servant leadership in the organization? Okay, so that's a critical one as well. It's making sure that that servant leadership forms part of a process in the organization, where you really want to be taking your team through the organization with the support. And I love the term servant leadership. I think it's a fantastic way of making sure that we aim for high performance out of our organization. And is our technology and systems kept up to date, current, ensuring our organization doesn't suffer tech creep? The same organization, the USM, have had to spend hundreds of thousands of rands implementing new and modern technology systems in place to make sure that the organization keeps abreast of certain processes. And absolutely critical, because if you don't keep your technology up to date as far as a process in your business, you will pay a severe tax as a result of that. So briefly speaking, 6 key process areas in an organization: management, finance, marketing, sales, operations, HR, and R&D. Those would be the 6 key areas to look at processing or creating processes around. Ideally, standard operating procedures, which would allow the efficiencies of these departments to run. This is the blood that pumps through the organization's body. So lastly, once you've got purpose, people, and process to blend, what we get is the company objective. And this is really what we want to achieve. When we have 1 or 2 areas which when we have purpose or process which pulls out, or we have people and process which aren't in sync, the objectives of the company are what suffer. So there we go. I hope it's been useful. I'd like to ask if there's any questions, and maybe Zine, pass it back to you.
Thank you, Clyde. I thought that was really, really insightful, actually. And those simple questions, I know that I was looking at them from an Ideas UK perspective, and particularly the purpose ones. I think we've just kind of redone our purpose, our why. It's taken us probably a lot longer than the timeframe you suggest. But actually, the second question, which is, are we all aligned? I think that's a really critical piece, because probably at this stage we're not. So that's certainly something for us to work on, which is really useful. So I really appreciated you sharing your presentation, and I can see that we've already got a hand up from Chris. So Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Zine. Thank you, Clyde. That was really, really good. Thank you. Really interesting. Well, 2 questions. One of them, did I get it right with the phrase you used? It systemize the machine and humanize the exception. It was just, if you could say a little bit more about that, and where that because that's fascinating me. And my other, it's just a random question: do you work with anyone in ESCOM? Is ESCOM the energy providers? Just some thoughts on that, if possible.
Thanks so much, Chris. I'll answer your last question first. No, I don't. Unfortunately, I'm not. Yeah, they need lots of innovative thinkers in that organization, don't they? But no, definitely not. So just to clarify, the first one is it's systemize the routine and humanize the exception.
Could I ask?
So really, what we want to be doing there?
Yeah. Did you invent that, or is it from? Has someone else said it, or where did you get it from?
That was definitely borrowed. Definitely been borrowed.
Do you know where from? I'd like to borrow it as well.
No, that's an action coach. It's an action coach saying from Brad Sugars. He talks about systemizing routine and humanizing the exception.
Routine, brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Thank you. That's really useful.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, Chris. My pleasure.
Thank you. So in my only connection with ESCOM, I've bumped into some people from the organization resilience department, and I kind of guess it says something because they've all moved out to living in Ireland and abroad now, which is, I think things are a bit too tough, even from an organizational resilience team department.
Absolutely, it's quite phenomenal. There's it's an organization on its knees, to be very honest, and I think out of that there will be a phoenix that will rise through the ashes. It will probably be a privatized approach to power generation in the country, but as far as the company goes, it's pretty much dead in the water, unfortunately. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
We got any other questions for Clyde? Lindsay.
Hi, Clyde. I'm Lindsay. I work in the NHS here in the UK. So I work in the health sector. So a slightly different lens, let's say, but this is all still really, really relevant and really, really important. So you probably might assume that we know our purpose. Sometimes that's something that we do need to realign with our staff, but actually organisational purpose. So there are very specific purposes. So I think my reflection is don't assume that purpose is known, because it's important to revisit that, to reword that, to ensure that everybody has an ownership of that purpose. And we definitely do that on an annual basis from an NHS perspective. And they're really interested in the process bit. So I'm improvement lead in the NHS. So that process bit is really, really interesting for us as well. And we're doing loads of work on that at the moment to make it easy. So it's demystifying improvement. It's not a dark art. We don't have to use all these clever words. You know, this is about good people doing good stuff and having good conversations. So I think really kind of keeping process simple and the language around the process simple is definitely something that I've learned in my years in the NHS. But I just wanted to say thank you. It's incredibly relevant for lots of different sectors and definitely from a health perspective.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lindsay. I can totally imagine. It's a very, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very underrated. These can be very underrated organization unless they are addressed on an ongoing basis. They generally show in the results and again the actions, behaviors, and decisions of an organization. And especially being an organization like NHS, to realign with their purpose on a constant basis is golden. But thank you for your feedback. I much appreciate that.
Thanks. And I think when you look at those kind of three elements, the purpose, the why you do something, this so relates to innovation as well. You know, knowing why you do it in relation to the purpose of the organization is critical, having those robust processes in place. And then most importantly, engaging people, because without people, you get nothing through your system. So I just think it's so relevant, not only for the broader, bigger picture, but actually when it comes to innovation programs too. So unless anyone's got any further questions, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to you, Clyde, for sharing your expertise today. As Connor said at the start, we haven't had a business focus session for quite a while. And I think sometimes it's really important to just, as I say, do the basics well and to refresh us on what we should be doing and what we should be reviewing on an ongoing basis. So thank you again from all here at Ideas UK. And we really appreciate kind of your time and your expertise today. So thank you very much.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Zena.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yes, thanks, Clyde. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.